The entire team at the Emsolation podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians and cultures of the lands and seas on which we live and work. We pay our respects to all First Nations peoples, elders and ancestors. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded and stand in solidarity towards a shared future. I personally want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I record this podcast every week, the Wurundjeri people. I recognise their continued connection to the land and waters of this beautiful place I call home. Always was, always will be.
M. Russiano.
And I think maybe because I wanted to make it professional, my brain was like, aha, okay, bitch, and went completely the other way.
And Michael Lucas.
Oh, likewise with you. Can't wait. And just remember, if it's too fatty, just heat it up.
This is Emsolation.
I was working for Baz Luhrmann.
Oh, just pick that name up.
Oh, no, but I was.
You're in Emsolation.
Well, hello there and welcome to Emsolation. My name is M. Russiano. I'm a writer, a singer, a stand-up comedian, a maximalist power queen, a neurodivergent magic brain. Specifically, I have ADHD combination type, hyper and inattentive. Oh yeah, I got the jackpot. I'm also on the autism spectrum. And this is my podcast. Now, normally I'm joined by my best friend since I was 11, screenwriter, Mr. Michael Lucas. But this week we have a very special chat. It's an Emsolation conversation with Dr. Perry Mandanis. And if you're here because you're a fan of his, welcome. You are most welcome to this podcast. Our other episodes are a little bit different to this. But I encourage you, if you are brave and bold and like over-the-top, out-of-control pop culture political chats, you will enjoy us. But this week is a very special in conversation with Dr. Perry Mandanis, who is a man that I came across on Instagram Reels in the most dire of times. He appeared as a shiny bright light. He is a psychiatrist, a therapist, a coach, an ADHD and mental health storyteller. And a lot of you were aware of him before I was, and his videos really, really saved me. What you're going to hear is a chat we had. Initially, I turned up 24 hours early for this chat because I got the time wrong and I couldn't figure out the difference between New York and Melbourne, but we got there in the end. He was very gracious with his time. You can follow him on Instagram at perry.mandanis.md. His videos are incredible. He also has a podcast called Couch Stories. We're going to get straight into this chat where I didn't record me saying hello to him, but I want you to know I did. It's so great. Have a pen and paper ready. You're going to want to take notes or have your voice memos ready. Don't rely on your memories because if you hear, there's a chance you're neurodivergent and your memory's rubbish. But this is so great. So many great ideas. I hope that you walk away feeling a bit lighter and seen and like there's a way forward if you're here and not sure, maybe you are neurodivergent, maybe you aren't. Maybe you're here because you love someone who is. Well done on educating yourself. Whatever has brought you to this episode, I'm glad and grateful for. So please enjoy my chat. We get straight into it. We're both musical theatre nerds. There's no hello. Here he is, the wonderful Dr. Perry Mandanis.
M. Russiano and Michael Lucas. This is Emsolation.
Thank goodness for your feed. It's been very important to me over the past little while. So thank you for doing those.
Over my many years in practice as a psychiatrist and medical doctor, I have met lots of people, children and adults with ADHD. Of course, they come to see me first for their problems. But one of the things that I have noticed that all these people seem to have in common is a long list of very special skills. For one, they are resilient. Because of their ADHD, they've had to learn how to adapt, overcome hardship, and push through to still be successful. That's an incredibly strong skill that serves them well in adulthood.
I really appreciate that. It's happened rather suddenly. I'm very new to social media.
What? No, you're an expert. I see those videos. Then someone has really trained you well because you're really engaging with it all.
You're going to love this. You will love this. I was a musical theater major.
I can tell.
And then I went to medical school. So I think it's kind of all coming together for me now, I suppose.
Yes. I too am a musical theatre, nerd. So
I assumed as much.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. No, it's they're very good. And when I was diagnosed, started just getting sent to me by my community, by my followers. And initially I was like, why am I being sent? Because I couldn't hear the sound. I could just see it. I'm like, this is a doctor from America. And then I would turn it on and I'm like, oh, he's camp. Oh, he gets it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dr. Perry, I'll do a whole big fancy intro for you pre-recorded. So we'll just get straight into the chat. What made you specialize specifically in ADHD and neurodivergent women? Because it seems that's your sweet spot.
I think mostly because they've been underserved. And I think because in 35 years of practice, I have discovered so many mothers who, while their child was being diagnosed, the light bulb went off in my consultation room that they had it as well. And so it seemed like, wow, this is a group of people that no one talks about, understands, thinks about. And, part of that is just the sexism of history for centuries. We're going to talk about that, I'm sure.
Yes.
But mostly I came about it indirectly because I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. So most of my patients are school-age children, and then their parents just kind of got found out really by accident.
Yes. Well, after I was diagnosed last year, I was 42 and I was accused of jumping on a fad or jumping on the ADHD bandwagon. And there was a lot of, everyone's being diagnosed with ADHD now. And I never really know what to say in response to that. So what should I say in response to that? Why are so many women being diagnosed, past 35?
I think it's I have a lot to say about that.
Good.
First of all, for starters, the facts are that girls are still very much underdiagnosed worldwide. So if girls are underdiagnosed, then it stands to reason that women will be left undiagnosed when they're older. Boys, on the other hand, at least in the United States, are overdiagnosed, not to the degree where we have a problem really, but still boys are being overdiagnosed. And I think that these girls who had ADHD all along grow up to be undiagnosed women, many of whom have that aha moment while they're in the session with their child. And I also think girls are a little bit more difficult to diagnose because, as you know, they're more likely to have the inattentive type. So in terms of just the medicine aspect of things, the inattentive type, girls daydream, they can be more forgetful, they can lose their belongings, but as long as they're not disrupting the class or bothering anybody, they can really go unnoticed. And then I think, we mentioned sexism earlier. I think culturally, girls are taught to be quiet and to be compliant and to be studious. And boys are given a pass, like, boys will be boys, so we allow them to misbehave. So I think part of it is all of that comes forward with girls. And then I think to make matters even worse, which I know we're going to talk about this later, as girls grow up and go through menarche and begin to menstruate, often for 2 weeks out of the month, their ADHD kind of goes away. And then for the next 2 months, it's a disaster. And so half the time they're doing okay and half the time they're not. And I think that results in confusion to parents and girls alike. So, girls are more difficult to identify. It is true. It's not just that our system is bad, although our system is bad.
So is
but it is more complicated than that. So I can be a little bit more forgiving of the medical community.
For me, the pandemic, we had the world's harshest lockdowns in Melbourne. Like, we were locked down for almost a year, pretty much. And for me, that's when the wheels fell off. I all my usual systems and coping techniques and ways I was masking, all of a sudden I couldn't function because I'm a stand-up comedian, so I perform and I'm always going. I've always got the dopamine coming in.
Right. That's stimulating.
Yeah, flying by the seat of my pants and just, everything's a bit of a hot mess, but we make it work. And then all of a sudden I'm at home with my 3 kids and my husband and my 3 dogs all the time. And I was just, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't function. And then when things started opening up again, it felt like everyone else was getting on a fast train and I was left on the platform to watch them speed past me. And I just couldn't get back on the train. And in Australia, especially when I started speaking about my diagnosis, a lot of women kind of had a light bulb moment with the way I spoke about my symptoms.
Sure.
And then this fad thing started being thrown around. And I guess for me, the pandemic really brought my symptoms to the surface. And I imagine that happened for a lot of women also.
In all sorts of in a number of mental conditions, the pandemic has done that. In substance abuse, in depression, in anxiety, we've had an increase in suicides worldwide. I mean, we can go on and on. But, one of the reasons why I think people are seeing it as a fad, if you will, is a good thing because social media has been amazing at bringing ADHD to the forefront on TikTok, on Instagram, and raising the awareness. And social media, by and large, 80% of my followers are women, not just because I have made it part of my practice to work with women, but 80% of, I think, all of the Instagram followers are women. It's a primarily female platform. And so the more women find out, the more they know, the more light bulbs go off, the more people come forward who are part of that undiagnosed group of girls. And so it's a wave of awareness that's fantastic. The other thing that the young therapists have to say, I just marvel at my peers who are much, much younger than I in the mental health space. They are doing such a great job of blowing up stigma about mental illness. Yes. And, I thought I wasn't sure that I would see that in my lifetime. And this is really exciting to see that people can just talk about their depression or their anxiety or their ADHD right alongside of their hypertension or their diabetes or whatever without the embarrassment, because your brain is an organ in your body just like your liver.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes, you're so right. A lot of questions that came to me when I said I was speaking to you. You're a rock star within my community, let me just say. It was women who were over the age of 40 wondering if they should even bother getting a diagnosis because they've self-identified as ADHD through doing all the checklists. Then they're like, I'm in my 40s. Why bother? What would you say to them?
Well, first, it's never too late. But I think the way to decide for yourself is I use 3 criteria. Are your symptoms, are your behaviors, or what you notice about yourself persistent? They happen all day, every day of the year. Number 2, are they pervasive? You notice them at work, you notice them at home, you notice them in the market, you notice them at church. Everywhere you go, there you are. And the third one is the most important one. If it's persistent and it's pervasive, is it impairing? To what extent do you feel frustrated by your life? To what extent do you feel like there's a cost to having ADHD? Sure, you manage it well. I mean, I think the fact that women manage their symptoms so well is another reason why they go undiagnosed, is because they become good at masking. But there's a cost for that, and it's exhaustion. Yes, complete and total utter exhaustion. Oh, you're making me teary because I was 3 for 3 on all of those things. So if we do decide to go get diagnosed, how does I've had a lot of women contact me to say they have gone to see their MDs and have suggested maybe could they be possibly looked at for having ADHD, and are often met with skepticism, or they're told they're anxious or they're depressed. So how does one go about getting a diagnosis? Well, for starters, you want to prepare your doctor. Right. I get a lot of those questions too, Em, and I'll have to say, I'm not going to apologize for my peers in medicine, but I want you to know that most primary care medical doctors, general medical doctors, pediatricians, they see roughly 6 or 7 patients an hour. Whereas when you're a psychiatrist, I get the pleasure and privilege of seeing one person every 90 minutes, 2 hours, if it's for an assessment. So if you are in the middle of your general health visit that you're going to get 15 minutes a year with your doctor and with your hand on their doorknob say, oh, by the way, it's not going to go.
Don't drop the bomb at the end of the session.
Exactly. And, that is kind of what happens. Well, the doctor doesn't have time, for starters.
Yeah.
And so, number one, prepare your doctor. Call ahead, speak with the office, ask for more time. There is a way in the insurance industry, by the way, here, if the U.S. people, if your followers are U.S. citizens, they can ask for more time and the doctor can bill for that. So there is a way for that to happen. So prepare your doctor so they know you're coming in for this specific reason so that they're ready to receive you thoughtfully and not be rushed.
Yeah.
Number 2. Prepare yourself. And I have got a lot of reels. I've got a couple of reels on this, by the way. So if any of your listeners will follow me at perry.mandanis.md, I'm more than happy to answer their direct messages. I will send them copies of the reels so that they have the content and the information so they can prepare. But basically, it comes down to download one of the good self-assessment screens online and take it. And then look at where you scored high marks. And in those areas where you scored high marks, write down examples of how your life has been affected by that. So, for example, if you scored high marks for forgetfulness, you might want to write down things like, I forgot to pick up my child from school more than once. I forgot to pay my taxes on time. I forgot my child's tuition. I forgot, I have burned so many meals and ruined so many pots and pans, right? So you need kind of concrete out of your life examples. So your doctor, you want to give your doctor a kind of a field trip into your life so they can see how it affects you. Otherwise, they're not gonna get it. So the more prepared you are, the better.
Which is very un-ADHD like to be prepared, Dr. Perry.
And see, that's the thing. And so I was getting ready to say, the very thing that I'm asking you to do is the very thing that an undiagnosed person is going to have trouble with. So always ask for help. If this is an important appointment, ask someone to go with you, or ask someone else to print the thing out and sit down with you and ask you the questions. Whatever you need to do to make it happen, go show up prepared, because you're much more likely to have a thoughtful, reasonable outcome.
Because the diagnosis process is the most unfriendly ADHD. It's horrible. I really battled. It took me the better part of a year to get, because you've got to advocate for yourself, which isn't many women's strong point as a baseline, neurodivergent or not. We're often told to kind of keep our heads down and not make a big deal and not draw attention. And so you're really drawing attention to a part of yourself that maybe you don't like. So it's a tough one. Yeah.
And there's shame involved with that too. And, there's so much of that and so much negative self-talk that has been internalized for so long. That's a big part of it too, I think.
Yeah. There's just general shame in being a woman, just walking out the door. But after my diagnosis, and I know this is a case for a lot of women, I went through, I think, the 7 stages of grief, or 6 or 7.
Yeah.
But the grief for me was the hardest thing, and I'm still dealing with it. I still get teary thinking about 10-year-old Em, who was just trying so hard at school and was constantly told, you're not reaching your potential, work harder, try harder, we can see you're smart, why are you being lazy, you're so disorganized. So all these messages got fed into me, and I tried so hard, and I was very, very good at hard stuff and very, very bad at easy stuff. And so my sense of what is an achievement or isn't is all out of whack still. How do we process the grief for, our smaller people, the kids that we were when we were undiagnosed?
You know, the short answer is going to be radical acceptance. I'm in a wheelchair, Em. So what happened to me, and this is a quick little story that I'm using to illustrate. Yeah. So I fell down a flight of stairs after finishing school, literally the day I was moving a desk into my office to hang my shingle on the door that said Dr. Perry Mandanis.
Oh my goodness.
And had to interrupt the start of my career by a year. So here I am in the hospital. And, you know, that was 30 some odd years ago. So it was a long time. I was in the hospital for over a year. And in the middle of it, I became terribly depressed to the point of paying attention to when the nurses were coming and going. So I was a doctor. So if I needed to steal the supplies that I needed to take my own life, I was going to figure out how to do it. Now, I realized, thankfully, I had, you know, crossed the line here. And I spoke up the next morning. I told them how depressed I had become because I just was not accepting that I was going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. You know, I had just finished 15 years of education.
Oh my gosh. So,
you know, they set me up with this amazing therapist. And he was in a spinal cord injury hospital. So he says, you know, Perry, the only people that I work with are people that have suffered this exact same injury that you have. And what I've noticed about them over my years in practice is they always land in one of two groups. Group one continues to grieve their loss. They continue to feel sad about it. They continue to be angry about it. But for whatever reason, they're unable to feel it and then redirect it towards something positive. So their grief never becomes relief.
Wow.
Group two, he said, are happy people in wheelchairs.
Oh my God.
You know, it's like happy people in wheelchairs.
What?
You know, so like, you know, but that was like, it was so profound that I was not going to have a choice about whether I was going to be in a wheelchair or not. My choice was whether or not I was going to be in group two and be a happy person in a wheelchair. And I was resolutely focused on doing that after he said that to me. So what I would say to anyone that is experiencing what you said is just acknowledge the grief. It is real. It is legitimate. Do not tolerate in yourself or anyone else that bullshit, like, give it time, you'll be okay. None of that works. Acknowledge the grief. Be willing to ask for help, but ultimately it's going to come down to radical acceptance where you feel it, you know it happened, it is your reality, and then you have to let it go.
I love, you're going to make me cry. I normally make other people cry. This is not good. I love that grief into relief idea. It's just so simple, but it's something tangible. You can almost like imagine it leaving your body and like waves. That's really good. Thank you. You've really welcome. Helped me already. We're in the 18 minutes in and I'm a changed woman. Along the same lines, I still feel a bit of internalized ableism around telling people about my diagnosis. Yep. And because, you know, up until recently, I associated ADHD with 10-year-old boys who bounced off walls and shouldn't drink red cordy.
Yeah.
So when I am advocating for myself, say if I've got a meeting or an event and I need to kind of say how I need certain things in place and they like, why? And you say, look, I have ADHD. I feel myself cringe. How do it almost feels like it's weak or an excuse or there's not enough gravitas to the diagnosis to warrant my requests. Does that make sense?
It does, but let me say, first of all, in terms of the gravitas, this is something no one talks about. I can guarantee you're not going to find a social media influencer who's talked about it. But people with ADHD have a 3-time greater chance of committing suicide than people who don't have it.
Wow.
So there's a boatload of gravitas that goes with having this disorder, which I hate calling it that. But in order for insurance companies to pay for it, in order for schools to provide your children with accommodations, we kind of have to buy into the medical model. But when I'm talking with a person who has it, I don't talk about disorder. I talk about difference. And why that's so important is that's the path for you to get beyond being apologetic. it's about self-compassion, really. And I'm not talking about self-compassion when you're getting it right.
Yeah.
Anybody can do that. I'm talking about self-compassion when you're at your worst.
Yeah.
And if you can laugh at yourself then and give yourself some grace then, and then just fully celebrate your difference and just be your quirky, forgetful self, because that's who you are, right?
Yeah.
Once you adopt that, once you allow yourself just to be you, then it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell people when I show up, I'm in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So it's a little different for you that you have to tell people, but it's part of who you are. And the minute you have self-compassion, you can do it. And that is the path forward. I'm telling you, all the executive functions in the world that someone can learn do not help like self-compassion does.
I think also, Dr. Perry, it's the name. It distills what we have down to kind of one thing, an attention deficit, which I have too much attention. I just don't know where to put it. If someone's got the flu or if someone's got depression or if someone's got anxiety, we know what that means. But I think it kind of minimizes the complex, layered behavior that goes into having what I have.
100% agree.
Yeah.
And they've changed the name and made it even more confusing. And, it used to be, so it's horrible. And the word deficit is in the title. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Executive function disorder, I've heard floated around.
But that sounds like your office isn't running smoothly, which, look, it isn't. My office in my brain is often drunk. There needs to be some sort of descriptive language. I candidly prefer neurodivergence. I think it's brilliant. I say that. Yeah, that's what I call myself, neurodivergent. Yeah.
And I also think that it helps in terms of that I'm not damaged, I'm just different.
Yes.
I think that's really very helpful. Yeah. So, but I think you're totally right. I mean, I just think people cannot wrap their brain around it.
No. Especially in regards to the behaviors I find so hard, because I'm really good at getting up in front of 5,000 people and singing and writing shows and running a business. When they hear it, especially when I told family members, my parents too had a hard time accepting it. They were just like, no, but you're so, no. And you're so, you don't look like that, but you're clever, but, all these things. And it's like, how do women especially convey to friends and family? I don't know how to get people to on board and to understand and, walk a mile in my shoes, so to speak.
First of all, it's going to take time, right? Especially if it's new for them, right? The first time you tell someone something, they have to digest it and they should learn. If someone cares about you and it's in your family, it's reasonable for you to ask them to do some homework. It's reasonable for you to just be honest and respectful and direct and provide them with a website they can read or print materials that they can read. If you feel comfortable, invite them to attend one of your doctor appointments with you so that a medical professional can tell them and they can ask questions of that professional.
That's such a good idea. I've never thought about that. Yes.
People take family members, if you get diagnosed with cancer, you take your family member with you almost all the time. Yeah. And a lot of times, patients get upset in their doctor appointments. And especially people with ADHD, they don't hear what you've had to say, right? So having another person there actually just as another set of eyes and ears is very beneficial.
That's really true. Especially my husband, and I know this is the case for other people, their significant others, they've gotten used to kind of benefiting from the way my brain is for a long time. And then I've had to put some boundaries in around not working like a maniac. And because I have combo type and I probably lean more towards hyper. So when I said, no, I can't do all of the things all the time anymore, it's often met with a bit of resistance. And it's a hard thing to navigate when your significant other is neurotypical and doesn't really see, because oftentimes my husband's like, just do it. Why can't you just do it? And I'm like, oh, thank you. The ADHD is just leaving my body. I'll just do it. So how do we navigate that within a romantic relationship?
Yeah. First, let me say, if you are in a relationship with someone who has ADHD,
yes,
you're going to be disappointed a lot. Right? I mean, that you're going to be disappointed a lot. But let me say, no one, and I mean no one, is more disappointed than the person who has it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They're constantly having to confront their feelings of disappointing the other person for some reason. So I do have a reel about this. I'm happy to share it.
Please do, yes.
How to be a supportive partner. But,
I did send that to my husband, Dr. Harry.
Very good. Very good. You want to radically listen to the person. Don't interrupt them. They're going to jump around a bit, but my experience with people that have ADHD is they may jump around a bit, but they kind of always circle back. Don't parent the person. Be a partner. Don't tell them what to do. Don't act like a parent. Be patient. Learning new routines and skills are hard for people that have ADHD. Learning skills and routines are hard for neurotypical people. So certain tasks might take more time. When you're in a loving relationship, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations, and those can be difficult. And just make sure you schedule plenty of time for that. Get up, walk away, come back. And if you're a partner of someone with ADHD, I think something really important is to prioritize what you have to say and share one detail with them.
Yes.
Don't give them some long list of things and think they're going to hear them all. They're going to hear the last thing you said.
Yeah.
So try to keep it short and sweet. And, and then I also want to mention caution. 80% of people that have ADHD also have rejection sensitive dysphoria.
Yep.
And sometimes in spades. Now, rejection sensitive dysphoria is a peculiar phenomenon that, again, is not even in the DSM yet. It's not a diagnosis. It's not even in the list of symptoms of ADHD, even though clinicians like myself have seen it for a very long time, and there's statistics about how many people have it. Okay, so it is in part biological, that this is how your brain operates. And people with ADHD, when it comes to intense emotion, they go from 1 to 100 like that.
Yes.
And so all of that social skills training and anger management training, and you go to therapy and you talk to your therapist about it, and then you come back and the therapist said, well, how did it work out? And how did, those skills that they don't work.
Nah.
Because you go from 1 to 100 so fast.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is, if you are a partner of somebody with ADHD who has RSD, you have to learn how to work backwards. Okay. So once the blow up has already happened, once the strong emotions have already been expressed, chances are they don't last very long. I mean, that's the other thing. People with ADHD who have RSD, they recover pretty quickly. So you want to just fall silent. You don't have to address it. You don't have to judge it. You don't have to do anything other than wait. And then when they're ready, you can say, that was pretty strong. Or I just want you to know, I understand where it's coming from, but I still have the right to tell you it hurts my feelings when you yell and scream at me or whatever happened. And so do you think that level of reaction was necessary or legitimate or whatever when we're talking about, the kids spilled milk in the kitchen? And, work backwards, because what happens after time when you do work backwards, people with RSD actually can learn to go from 1 to 70.
Really?
And not from 1 to 100 with absolute practice. Absolutely. So when you're gentle and patient and you allow the emotion to happen, over time, they do learn to monitor and recover pretty quickly. I have to say, if you're interested, there are medicines that help it. The ADHD medicines do not help RSD.
What? Okay, we need to talk about this. I'm Italian also, so I have RSD and I'm Italian. So
okay.
it's a double
You're
layer.
The double whammy. I'm Greek, so I get it.
There you go. I have no emotional regulation. I feel everything at 100. Right. My nerve endings are on the outside of my skin. I get really passionate and really hurt. I have the capacity to feel personal attacks like no one else.
Right.
So what
So some of it for you is your brain, and some of it for you is cultural.
Yeah.
And some of it for you, you've already talked about, Em.
Yeah.
By the time a child with ADHD, whether diagnosed or not, reaches the age of 12, they have internalized 20,000 negative comments about themselves.
Yeah.
By the time they're 12.
Yeah.
So no wonder they're so defensive. No wonder they're so reactive when they think they're being criticized. You know, like I've already got my boxing gloves on because, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
So the ADHD medicines, the stimulants, Ritalin, Vyvanse, Adderall, not very effective for the emotional component of this condition. And I'll tell you, executive function all day, the thing that most people complain most about is the emotion dysregulation.
Yes.
That's what's hardest for people that have this. They can learn how to keep a planner eventually. They can, whatever. But the thing that's the hardest is the emotional component. Alpha adrenergic agonists, clonidine or guanfacine, is what you might ask a doctor about. They make your fuse a little longer.
Okay.
So that you still feel the feelings more intensely than other people, but you have a lot more time to use some of those learned skills that you might have picked up. So it's worth asking about because it does show some benefit.
I really will, because I need to grow a fuse first. It's just flashpoint for me. It's just explosion. So I'm going to look into that. Good to see. Okay. Now, the menstrual cycle and ADHD, your video on this was a game changer. And it's something, and I also want to talk about menopause too, because just the hormones in general with women, it's not discussed at all because of period shame and menstruation shame. And I've really been, I really want to get it out there and open it up. So
I do too.
Yeah, I love that. I love that about you. But I don't think.
But wait, now listen, you got to hear this though.
Yeah,
I got a lot of flack from women for that reel.
No, maybe American women, not Australian women. I'll tell you right now, they love it.
Lots of women responded quite positively.
Oh yeah,
the far majority. Yeah. But I got a lot of you're blaming women for their period. You're blaming women's behaviors for their period, and you're trying to mansplain our behaviors to us. I got a lot of that.
Nah.
But, I still feel like the information is beneficial.
It is beneficial. And look, as a card-carrying feminist...
I mean, I don't have to be female to give you information about hormones. So
tell me,
menstrual period is basically a 4-week cycle. Mm-hmm. And during the first 2 weeks, or the follicular phase of a woman's cycle, their estrogen climbs very high. Mm-hmm. And when your estrogen levels are high, that stimulates dopamine. Ta-da! And so you have lots and lots and lots of dopamine during those first 2 weeks, which is why a lot of women will say their symptoms really do decrease considerably, sometimes to the point of not even noticing that they have it for those 2 weeks. However, during week 3, when progesterone starts to go up and estrogen starts to come down, as we enter into that luteal phase, all hell breaks loose because the dopamine plummets to levels that are even lower than at the beginning of your period. And that is a time of struggle, tremendous struggle for women. And unfortunately, I have bad news. You asked about menopause. Estrogen by definition goes down during menopause. So that's definitely going to be a conversation. If you're a female ADHDer, you should start having that conversation now with your gynecologist so that you learn about what some of your options are. If you're seeing a gynecologist and a psychiatrist, they should partner together because there may be things that can be done hormonally if you're open to that, that your gynecologist can do during weeks 3 and 4. And there are things that your psychiatrist or your mental health person can do to help you during weeks 3 and 4. Because my patients I teach them how to adjust their meds. Their dose of medicine for their ADHD is going to be different during weeks 3 and 4 than it is for weeks 1 and 2.
Wow.
And you just kind of learn. And the other thing I really coach women to do is pay attention to your cycle. And literally take a calendar so that you can make the most out of those 2 weeks when you're at your best. I mean, if you got to get your taxes done, that's a good time to prepare them. If you have to do some chores or whatever it is, if you've got a big project going on at your workplace, try to schedule it during those 2 weeks because you know what's going to happen. So make the most of that time and use it wisely if you can think that way.
Imagine allowing ourselves to be that radically compassionate and tell people, sorry, this is the 2 weeks we've got. And then I'm rubbish. Oh my God.
Or I just have to do other tasks. I have to do things that I'm able to do during those 2 weeks. Things that are more fun, things or whatever it is. That's a time to be creative if it's stimulating because you get dopamine from that. So you can sort of, but again, it involves planning. And that is a tough thing for people with ADHD.
Yes.
It is. I mean, that's.
Yeah, you're right. So you do specialize in child and adolescent psychiatry, and my middle daughter was diagnosed with inattentive type ADHD, and my son has autism, and I'm trying to navigate that with them in the world, and my 15-year-old especially is having a tough time. How can parents of adolescent girls especially support them through the ADHD diagnosis and everything that comes with it? Because she's really struggling, and 15's hard enough, as you probably remember.
To be 15, no kidding. I think education. I think it's worthwhile having very candid conversations with children about their brains.
Yeah.
I think it's also very beneficial to help them understand that they're different. That doesn't mean that they're defective, but that you're different. And because you're different, here's what's going to happen during your period. I also think routine. Many children, like yourself, have a parent that has ADHD where the establishment of routines can be difficult. If you happen to be lucky enough to have a neurotypical partner, maybe that person can be responsible for that aspect of the household. Advocacy. You really have to speak up for your children in the school system.
Yeah.
You often have to schedule a phone call between the school and the doctor, or make sure that you get a report from that doctor, because schools, they have limited resources and they often ration those limited resources. So you will have to advocate for your child so that they understand her, so that, they don't shame her or say things like, this is the 10th time I've had to ask you to remember to bring in your homework. Even if it is the 10th time you've had to remind the kid to bring in their homework, there's a much better way to help them understand that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I see you've forgotten your homework and it's happened a few times. Let's talk about what you might want to do differently tomorrow. All right, how would you do that? So you can actually talk them through the solutions rather than shaming them for the mistake.
Yeah, and that's, a lot of teachers will be listening to this. What would you like to say to teachers? How can they best support kids they suspect having ADHD?
Well, I do think they need to pay attention to self-esteem development. And I'll say that to parents as well. Because when it comes to young children and it comes to teenagers, their self-esteem development is one of the most vulnerable parts of a child on a good day, much less neurodivergent kids, right? And so if you hear your kids saying things like, I'm stupid, or I can't do that, or what's wrong with me, or I'll never get it, or everybody else can do it, but I can't, be a little bit more rigorous about intervening, because that child's already at risk in terms of their self-esteem and their emotional development. That doesn't necessarily have to be medicine, but certainly you want to intervene a bit more rigorously. If you're a teacher, call the parents in. If maybe some kind of rating scales can be done in class, etc. But pay attention to how well someone is socializing, particularly for girls. Pay attention to the girl that daydreams, or the girl who's isolative, or the girl who's not socializing particularly easily. Those are sometimes very subtle cues that'll tell you something's different. Other girls don't invite her to join them at lunch because this girl's either too much for those girls or just not enough. There's always that kind of element to this. So teachers have to learn to pay attention to some of the subtleties when it comes to girls.
Yeah.
The boys are going to be easy. The boys are going to,
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is, kids get bullied a lot. So notice that too. If who's being bullied, pay attention to that. That has meaning.
Yeah, it's so true, because often, like you said, the girls who aren't causing trouble, why are the teachers going to bother? Like, they've got other fish to fry. Just let the quiet girl sit and be quiet.
Right. And then, I just think pay attention to the RSD piece too. Kids who blow up really, really easily and quickly. Often teachers in particular, would think there's something wrong going on at home. Maybe, but it might just be something that's going on in that kid's brain that the parent should be aware of.
Yeah. I love all that. I'm going to practice all of that. It's also hard because I struggle. And a lot of parents who are neurodivergent obviously will have a child the same as them. So being able to work together and call the school and show up to the meetings and remember the emails and all of those things is tough. So, and I do end up feeling really guilty. Like, why did I miss it in her? Like, she didn't get diagnosed till we've been trying to get something diagnosed since she was 6. And first they thought it was dyslexia, and then it was just all these things. And finally I got diagnosed, and I was like, oh, hang on a minute. This is what Odette has. So we went to medication for her, and it's been a bit hit and miss. Medication isn't just the answer, is it? There's lots of other things that...
Oh, no. Pills aren't skills. No question about it.
You need a T-shirt that says
that. However, if you can support the health of the brain with some medicine, then children are much more likely to learn and master some skills. And I have seen them often take less medication as they get older because of that. So I'm all for intervening early. I hate to, I'm going to get some hate mail for pill pushing, but I think that it makes more sense to me to intervene quickly, because we do now have decades and decades and decades of safety information. People that have been on these medicines for their entire life, from the time they were children now into their 40s and 50s, and nothing's happened. So we do have some safety information that I think should help parents consider this, and consider, there's a cost to not taking the medicines as well. And so early intervention, early coaching, early medication, if that's the path you choose to take, all those things are going to help in the child's full human development. And I think that's the most important thing to pay attention to, really.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to kids.
I don't have a problem with medication. I mean, my life changed completely within half an hour of the day that I was first medicated. Like, it was like, holy shit, this is how I'm meant to be? Oh, my God.
That's one of the miracles of working with adults, actually. They get better so fast. Because you developed all of those skills by yourself before you got treated. Those skills don't go away. They just work better.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And can executive dysfunction or executive function be taught? Like, is it something that a muscle that you can
be?
It can?
It can be practiced. It can be taught. That is one of the dirty little secrets about ADHD, though.
What do you mean?
People with ADHD know exactly what it is they need to do.
Oh, yeah. God.
They know exactly what they want to do. They know exactly what they need to do. But somehow they still aren't able to do what they know. And that is the frustrating thing about it, right? And that's also what comes with some sort of level of embarrassment and whatever. I'm all about, we're lucky enough to live in a digital age. There's a lot of digital technology that will help.
Yeah.
There are applications for adults that are flow apps that have brown noise and white noise and colorful emojis and rewards that happen, and a way to organize your schedule, and a way to turn off notifications with all of your other devices so you're not distracted by them. And you can learn some skills that way. Coaching is very effective. There are a lot of excellent ADHD coaches online today who are working virtually, who are very, very helpful in helping people practice and learn executive skills and executive function. But it really does come down to what's the value of learning it.
Yeah.
You know what you need to do, but what's the value of this? Because sometimes if it's not fun, right?
Yeah.
If it's not fun, if it's not stimulating, if it isn't difficult, like you said, you don't do the easy things. Well, the easy things are easy.
Yeah.
So that's what, whereas the difficult things that are challenging stimulate your brain.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to perhaps partner the easy things with a reward.
Yes.
Or something that you really enjoy. And I'm all about scheduling the reward. So, have you heard of Pomodoro?
No.
So Pomodoro, Pomodoro, is a technique for managing your time. And the way, and it's not for people with ADHD, but it works quite well for them. You learn how to work for 20 minutes and then take a 10-minute break and plan what that 10-minute break is going to be.
Yeah.
It might be listening to, Beyonce's new album and dancing around your house or whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
But when you have a reward in mind, you get the benefit 3 times. You get the benefit when you're looking forward to the reward.
Yeah.
You get the benefit when you do the reward. And you get the benefit when you look back on, wow, that was fun listening to Beyonce. I enjoyed that. I need to remember to do that again. And so you get the reward 3 times when you plan it.
Yes. But the danger is in that 10 minutes, I'm going to wander off on a side quest.
Except if you're using a Pomodoro application, you will be prompted to return to your desk. So there, setting alarms and things, it is helpful. It is very helpful, but it really comes down to what's the value.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? Why do I care? How can I make this seemingly trivial chore like folding the laundry and putting it away or whatever it is that you have to do? How can I make that worthwhile for me?
Okay. Now that's good. Gaming, I call it gaming the system. So
totally. And gaming is another great thing to do.
Yes.
So, for example, people with ADHD love competition.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just going to use laundry again. And I'm not using that.
No,
to be
I know.
sexist.
You don't have to
really,
explain
I'm
it.
not.
You have to explain
but I'm just okay. So if you have to fold laundry, take a guess at how long it's going to take you to do it. I can fold this laundry in 30 minutes. I'm like, okay, let's set an alarm for 20 and see if we can beat that time. And I'm telling you, it's a trick, but it works.
I see that. I have baskets.
You can teach yourself to do some of these things better, but there will always be challenges. There will always be disappointments, and there will always be mistakes. So just laugh at yourself when it happens.
Oh, sure. I'll just laugh. I think we have covered everything I wanted to cover. You are a joy, a gem, a wonderful human working in this space that is so neglected. Is there anything you want to leave any woman sitting in her car now, maybe in tears, maybe having an aha moment? What would you like her to hear from you? Because there will be many, many of them right now.
The thing that helped me the most was someone telling me, you're going to have to be a happy person in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
I'm serious. But the most important thing I can tell you is if you have ADHD, that's not going to come from learning executive skills. It's not going to come from using your planner and scheduling things with your iPhone more wisely. It's going to come from self-compassion. You have to find a way to love who you are exactly the way you are with all of your warts, because that's who you are. And when you can celebrate that person, so much changes. You don't have to hide anymore. You don't have to mask anymore. You can just be yourself. And it is liberating when that happens.
Yeah. Radical self-acceptance.
Radical acceptance.
Dr. Perry, thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy day.
You're very welcome. It was a joy to be with you.
It was a joy to be with you.
I'm sorry we're so far away. I'm sorry we're so far away because it'll be fun to connect on a more, Anyway.
We will. Next time I'm there, I will be contacting you. But
do you ever perform in New York?
I come to New York sometimes. I haven't performed there yet, but I have been to New York.
I'm
a few
only
times.
3 hours away from New York, so
I'd
let me
make
know.
the trip. I would make the trip.
All right.
Thanks, Dr. Perry.
You bet. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
This is Emsolation. Emsolation with M. Russiano is a Spotify exclusive podcast recorded at Down the Hill Studios. Hosted by M. Russiano with Michael Lucas. Executive produced by Benjamin Wasley. Produced by M. Russiano. Edited by Ezekiel Fenn at Entente Music. With videos by James Henderson. Socials by Marcello Russiano Barrow. With assistance from Jem Evans and Georgia Watts. Plus, occasional office shelf installs and flat pack wrangling from M's dad Vincy. Get more Emsolation by following us on Instagram at Emsolation Podcast. You can also sign up for our weekly newsletter. Join other Emsolators of the Emsolation group on Facebook. The answer is Harry Styles. And please take the time to share this podcast with a friend and make sure you're following us on the Spotify app by hitting the follow button. Thanks again for taking time out to listen to this week's episode, and we look forward to chatting with you again soon.